Introduction. There is a difference between setting a boundary with someone and staying intact when they ignore it. Most people think boundaries are about what you say, about how clearly you communicate, about whether someone respects your words. But that is only half of it. The other half is internal. It is whether you stay yourself when they push back, whether your sense of who you are remains stable when someone misunderstands you, whether you can hold your ground without needing them to agree with you. This is what internal boundaries are. They are not walls you put up around yourself. They are the structure inside you that does not collapse under pressure. Most people do not have this. They have preferences, opinions, desires. But the moment someone challenges them, questions them, or withdraws approval, they fold. They adjust. They reshape themselves to fit what the other person wants. Not because they are weak, but because they were never taught that their identity is not up for negotiation. You have spent your life learning how to communicate boundaries, how to say no, how to express your needs. And those skills matter, but they are useless if you lose yourself the moment someone does not like your answer. This book is about the part of you that no one can touch unless you let them. The part that stays whole even when people misunderstand you. The part that does not need validation to stay true. It is about learning to be unmoved, not because you do not care, but because you know who you are, and that knowing is not conditional on whether other people see it. You will learn how to stop defending your choices to people who were never going to respect them, how to stop reshaping yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you, how to stop collapsing every time someone withdraws their approval. You will learn how to stay yourself, quietly, calmly, completely. This is not about building thicker skin, it is about building deeper roots. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Collapse Pattern. Why you change yourself when someone doubts you. Andrea is sitting across from her mother at lunch. The conversation has been light, pleasant. Then her mother says something small, something seemingly harmless. So when are you going to find a real job? Andrea feels the shift in her body immediately. Her chest tightens, her throat closes. She was calm a second ago. Now she is defensive. She starts to explain, to justify, to list all the reasons her work is valid. She talks about her clients, her income, her plans. She is trying to prove something, trying to make her mother see. But her mother is not listening. She is already talking about someone else's daughter who has a stable career, who has benefits, who has a title that makes sense to her. Andrea leaves the lunch feeling hollow. She was confident in her work before she arrived, but now she is questioning everything. Is she making a mistake? Is her mother right? Should she have chosen differently? She does not realize what just happened. Her sense of self collapsed the moment her mother doubted her. And instead of staying grounded in what she knows to be true, she spent the entire conversation trying to rebuild her identity in her mother's eyes. This is the collapse pattern, and it runs your life more than you realize. Most people believe their sense of self is stable. They think they know who they are, what they believe, what they value. But then someone questions them, challenges them, withdraws approval, and suddenly they are not so sure anymore. This is not a communication problem. This is an identity problem. Your sense of self is conditional. It depends on other people reflecting it back to you. It depends on external validation, on agreement, on approval. And the moment someone withholds those things, you lose your footing. This happens because most people build their identity externally. They look outside themselves to know if they are on the right path. If someone approves, they feel confident. If someone disapproves, they feel uncertain. This is called external referencing, and it makes you fragile. Because no matter how sure you are of something, the moment someone you care about questions it, you start to question it too. Not because they have new information, but because their doubt destabilizes you. The collapse happens in stages. First, you feel the challenge. Someone questions your choice, your belief, your path. Then, instead of staying grounded, you start defending, explaining, justifying. You are trying to get them to see, to understand, to validate. But what you are really doing is asking them to give you back the certainty you just lost. And when they do not, you collapse further. You start doubting yourself, wondering if they are right, reshaping your identity to fit what they think you should be. This is not about being influenced by wise counsel. This is about losing yourself every time someone disagrees with you. Example 1. You make a decision about your career. You feel good about it. Then a friend says it sounds risky. Suddenly you are second-guessing everything. You list all the reasons it is not risky. But you are no longer confident. You are performing confidence, trying to convince yourself as much as them. Example 2. You set a boundary with someone. You tell them you are not available. They push back. They ask why. They look hurt. And instead of holding your ground, you start backtracking. You offer explanations, you soften the boundary, you reshape it so they feel better. You just taught them that your boundaries are negotiable. Example 3. You share something you are excited about, a project, a goal, a dream. Someone responds with skepticism. They do not mean to hurt you, but their doubt hits you hard. You stop talking about it. You start questioning whether it is worth pursuing. You let their uncertainty become yours. When someone questions you and you immediately start defending, you are not protecting your truth. You are revealing that you do not fully trust it. People who are grounded in their choices do not need to explain them. They are not trying to convince anyone. They know what they know. And they are okay with other people not seeing it. But when you collapse, you are saying, I need you to agree with me so I can believe in myself again. That is not a boundary. That is dependency. Here is what you do not say. You do not say, let me explain why this makes sense. You do not say, you just do not understand. You do not say, I know it seems like a bad idea, but trust me. Those are the words of someone trying to rebuild their certainty through external validation. Here is what you do say. You say, I have made my decision. You say, this is what works for me. You say, I am not looking for input on this. You say nothing at all and let your choice stand on its own. The difference is this. One is asking for permission. The other is stating reality. Try this. The next time someone questions a decision you have made, notice your first impulse. Do you feel the need to explain, to justify, to prove? Pause. Do not speak. Take 3 breaths. Ask yourself, do I actually doubt this decision, or am I just uncomfortable with their doubt? If you still believe in your choice, you do not need to defend it. Let them doubt. Let them misunderstand. Let them think you are wrong. You do not need their agreement to stay intact. This exercise is not about being stubborn. It is about noticing when you hand your certainty to someone else and then scramble to get it back through explanation. You are allowed to make choices other people do not understand. You are allowed to hold beliefs other people do not share. You are allowed to live in a way that does not make sense to anyone but you, and you do not owe them a defense. The collapse pattern keeps you trapped in a cycle. You make a choice, someone questions it. You lose your footing, you defend, they do not validate. You doubt yourself, you reshape, and you do this over and over until you do not recognize yourself anymore. Because you are not living your life, you are managing other people's perceptions of your life. Internal boundaries are what keep you from collapsing. They are the part of you that says, I know what I know, and I do not need you to see it for it to be true. This is not arrogance, this is self-trust, and it is the foundation of everything else. Chapter 2. The Explanation Trap. Why your reasons make you weaker. Marcus tells his friend he cannot make it to the party this weekend. His friend immediately asks why. Marcus feels the pressure to give a good reason, a valid reason, a reason that will satisfy his friend and prove he is not just flaking. So he says he has been feeling overwhelmed lately, that he needs some time alone to recharge, that he has been saying yes to too many things and needs to pull back, that it is not about his friend, that he really wishes he could come but he just cannot handle it right now. His friend listens, then says, "You are always tired. Maybe you just need to push through it. Come for an hour. It will be good for you." Marcus feels trapped. He just gave a detailed explanation. And now his friend is using that explanation to argue with him, to convince him, to negotiate his boundary. He wanted his friend to understand. Instead, he gave his friend ammunition. This is the explanation trap. And every time you fall into it, you make yourself weaker. Here is what most people do not understand. When you explain yourself, you are not clarifying. You are asking for permission. You are saying, "Here are my reasons. Now tell me if they are good enough. Now tell me if I am allowed to do what I want to do." And the moment you do that, you turn your decision into a debate. Because when you give reasons, people hear options. They hear negotiation. They hear, "Convince me otherwise and I will change my mind." So they do. They poke holes in your logic. They offer solutions to your problems. They tell you why your reasons are not good enough. And suddenly you are defending a choice you already made. This is not about them being difficult. This is about you giving them an opening. People respect decisions. They argue with explanations. When you say, "I cannot come to the party," that is a statement. It is complete. It does not invite discussion. But when you say, "I cannot come because I am tired and overwhelmed and I need time alone," you just open the door. Now they can tell you that you are not that tired, that you will feel better if you come, that you are overthinking it. You thought you were being considerate by explaining. You are actually being weak. Example 1. You tell your parents you are not coming home for the holidays. They ask why. You list every reason. Your work schedule, your finances, your need for rest. They counter every single reason. They offer solutions. They tell you none of those things are real obstacles. You end the conversation feeling guilty and exhausted. You gave them too much information, and they used it against you. Example 2. You tell your partner you need a night to yourself. They ask what you are going to do. You say you do not know. Maybe read, maybe nothing. They say that sounds boring. They suggest you do something together instead. You feel pressured to justify why doing nothing is valuable. You are now defending your rest because you explained it. Example 3. Your boss asks you to take on another project. You say you do not have capacity. They ask why. You list everything on your plate. They tell you to delegate, to work faster, to reprioritize. You just turned a boundary into a problem they think they can solve because you gave them your reasoning. When someone asks why and you feel the need to justify, you are operating from a belief that your no is not enough on its own, that you need a reason that satisfies them, that you need their approval before your decision is valid. But you do not. A boundary does not require justification. A choice does not need to make sense to anyone but you. Here is what you do not say. You do not say, "I cannot because." You do not say, "The reason is." You do not say, "Let me explain." Here is what you do say. You say, "That does not work for me." You say, "I am not available." You say, "I have made my decision." You say, "I do not need to explain that." If they push, you repeat. You do not add more information. You do not give them new angles to argue from. You hold the line. Try this. For 1 week, practice saying no without giving a reason. Someone asks you to do something. You say, "I cannot do that." They ask why. You say, "It just does not work for me." If they keep pushing, you say, "I am not going to go into details." Or you say nothing at all. Notice how uncomfortable this feels. Notice the guilt, the pressure to justify, the fear that they will think you are rude or cold or hiding something. Sit with that discomfort. Do not give in to it. Because that discomfort is not proof that you are doing something wrong. It is proof that you are breaking an old pattern, a pattern where you believed you owed everyone an explanation. You do not. The more you explain, the more you invite negotiation. The more you justify, the more you signal that your decision is flexible. People sense this. They may not do it consciously, but they feel the opening. And they push, not because they are manipulative, but because you taught them that your boundaries are up for discussion. When you stop explaining, something shifts. People realize you are not asking for permission. You are stating a fact. And facts are not negotiable. At first, they may push harder. They may act confused, hurt, frustrated. They are testing to see if you will crack, if you will go back to explaining. Do not hold the silence. Let them sit with your decision. Let them be uncomfortable, because their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your clarity is. There is a difference between being considerate and being weak. Consideration is when you communicate your decision with respect. Weakness is when you ask for approval through explanation. You can be kind without being soft. You can be clear without being cruel, but you cannot be grounded if you are constantly justifying yourself. Internal boundaries are not built through better explanations. They are built through the willingness to let your decision stand without defense. You know what you need. You know what works for you. You do not need to prove it to anyone. And the moment you stop trying, you become unmovable. Chapter 3. The Approval Reflex. How to Stop Seeking Permission to Exist. Nina is in a meeting at work. She has an idea, a good one. She can feel it, but she does not speak. She waits. She looks around the room. She tries to gauge whether people will be receptive, whether her boss will approve, whether it is the right moment. Someone else speaks. They say something similar to what she was thinking. Everyone nods. Her boss says, "Great point." Nina feels a sting. That was her idea. But she waited too long. She needed the room to feel right before she could speak. She needed to know it would be received well. She does not realize she just asked for permission that no one was withholding. Later, she texts a friend about plans for the weekend. She types out a message, then deletes it, rewrites it, deletes it again. She is trying to sound casual, not too eager, not too demanding. She finally sends, "Hey, no pressure, but if you are free this weekend and feel like hanging out, I am around. But totally understand if you are busy." She reads it back. She sounds apologetic for existing. This is the approval reflex, and it shows up in everything you do. The approval reflex is the automatic need to check if you are allowed before you act. Allowed to speak, allowed to take up space, allowed to want something, allowed to be yourself. You do not do this consciously. It is not a decision. It is a reflex, a pattern so deeply ingrained that you do not even notice you are doing it. But it is there, in the way you soften your opinions, in the way you shrink your presence, in the way you apologize for things that do not need apologies. You are not asking if something is okay. You are asking if you are okay. And every time you do this, you teach yourself that your existence is conditional, that you are only allowed to show up if someone else gives you permission. This does not come from nowhere. You learned this. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that your needs were too much, your voice was too loud, your presence was an inconvenience. Maybe someone told you directly. Maybe they just made you feel it. Either way, you absorbed the message, and now you police yourself before anyone else can. You have become your own gatekeeper, constantly checking if you are allowed, constantly shrinking to make room for others, constantly performing smallness so no one accuses you of taking too much. But here is the truth. You do not need permission to exist. You do not need approval to speak. You do not need validation to take up space. You are allowed. You always were. Example 1. You are at dinner with friends. Someone asks what you want to eat. You say, "I am fine with anything. What do you want?" You do this even when you have a preference, because stating a preference feels too direct, too assertive. You wait for someone else to decide so you can agree. You are outsourcing your wants because claiming them feels like too much. Example 2. You send an email at work. You write, "Sorry to bother you. Sorry if this is a dumb question. Sorry for the long message." You apologize 3 times before you even make your point. You are preemptively shrinking yourself. Trying to take up less space before anyone tells you that you are taking up too much. Example 3. You want to share something you are proud of. A project, an accomplishment, a small win. But you do not. Because what if people think you are bragging? What if they do not care? What if it makes them uncomfortable? So you stay quiet. You hide your joy because you are afraid it is not allowed. When you are stuck in the approval reflex, you are not living. You are performing. You are constantly scanning the room for cues, adjusting your behavior, modulating your energy, making sure you are not too much or too little. And it is exhausting, because you are not asking yourself what you want. You are asking everyone else what they want from you. And then you are trying to be that. This is not connection. This is people-pleasing. And it will never make you feel safe, because approval is not stable. It shifts. It changes. What people praise today, they criticize tomorrow. You cannot build your sense of self on something that unstable. Here is what you do not say. You do not say, "Is it okay if?" You do not say, "Sorry for." You do not say, "I hope this is not too much." You do not say, "Let me know if this works for you." Here is what you do say. You say, "I would like." You say, "This is what I need." You say, "Here is what I think." You say, "I am going to do this." No apology, no hedging, no asking if you are allowed. Try this. For the next week, catch yourself every time you ask for permission you do not need. Notice when you say, "Is it okay if?" Notice when you say, "Sorry to bother you." Notice when you shrink your opinion before you even share it. Pause. Rewrite the sentence without the apology, without the softening. Instead of, "Sorry, do you have a minute?" say, "Do you have a minute?" Instead of, "I might be wrong," but say, "I think." Instead of, "If you are not too busy," say, "When you have time." Small shifts. But they rewire the reflex, because every time you state what you need without apologizing for it, you teach yourself that your needs are valid, that your voice matters, that you do not need permission to exist. The approval reflex makes you reactive. You do not act. You wait. You wait for someone to signal that it is safe, that you are allowed, that you will not be rejected, but that signal never comes because no one is thinking about whether you have permission. They are living their own lives, and they assume you are living yours. You are the only one holding yourself back. People who do not have this reflex do not ask if they can speak. They speak. They do not ask if their idea is good. They share it. They do not apologize for having needs. They state them, and people respect them for it. Because certainty is magnetic. Clarity is powerful. When you stop asking for permission, people stop questioning whether you deserve it. You are allowed to want things. You are allowed to have opinions. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to speak without checking if the room is ready for you. You are allowed to exist fully, without apology, without shrinking, without performing smallness. The approval reflex tells you that you are only safe if you stay small. But that is a lie. You are not safe when you shrink. You are just invisible, and invisibility is not peace. It is erasure. Internal boundaries mean you stop waiting for permission. You stop checking if you are allowed. You stop asking the world if you can be yourself. You just are. And that is enough. Chapter 4. The Identity Leak. Why you become who they need you to be. Tom walks into his parents' house for the weekend. Before he even sits down, he feels it, the shift. At work, he is confident, decisive, respected. He leads meetings, he makes calls. People listen when he speaks, but here in this house, he is someone else. He is quieter, smaller, more careful. He second-guesses himself before he speaks. He waits for approval before he acts. His mother asks him about his job. He downplays it. His father makes a comment about his choices. He does not push back. He just nods, agrees, lets it sit. By the time he leaves, he feels hollow, like he left a part of himself at the door, like he played a role he did not audition for. He tells himself this is just how it is with family. But the truth is deeper. He is not adjusting. He is leaking. His identity is not stable. It changes depending on who is in the room. And he has no idea how to stop it. This is the identity leak, and it is costing you more than you realize. Most people think they have a fixed sense of self. They believe they know who they are, what they stand for, how they show up in the world. But then they enter a certain space, a certain relationship, a certain dynamic, and suddenly they are different, not because they choose to be, but because they do not know how to stay themselves when the environment shifts. This is not code switching. Code switching is intentional. You adjust your tone, your language, your style, depending on context. That is strategic. This is something else. This is losing yourself. This is becoming who the room needs you to be because you do not have a strong enough core to stay intact. You are not adapting. You are dissolving. The identity leak happens when your sense of self is more dependent on external dynamics than internal truth. You do not have a stable center. You have a shifting reflection, so when you are around confident people, you shrink. When you are around insecure people, you inflate. When you are around people who need you to be small, you make yourself small. When you are around people who expect you to perform, you perform. You are a mirror, not a person. And you do not even realize it is happening, because it feels automatic, natural. Like this is just who you are in this context. But it is not. It is who you become when you do not know how to hold your shape. Example 1. You are with your family. At work, you are assertive, you set boundaries, you speak your mind. But with your family, you revert. You become the version of yourself they expect. The role you played growing up, the child, the peacekeeper, the disappointment. You do not choose this, it just happens. And by the time you leave, you feel like you lost yourself. Example 2. You are with a romantic partner. When you are alone, you feel grounded. But when you are with them, you start shape-shifting. You laugh at things that are not funny. You agree with opinions you do not hold. You hide parts of yourself you think they will not like. You do this unconsciously, because you are more afraid of losing them than you are of losing yourself. Example 3. You are in a new social group. You do not know these people well, so you watch, you mirror, you adjust, you try to figure out what version of yourself will be accepted here. And once you find it, you perform it. You do not show up as yourself. You show up as the version of yourself you think they will tolerate. When you leak, you are not being flexible. You are being unstable. Flexibility is when you adjust your communication style while staying rooted in who you are. Instability is when you change who you are depending on who is watching. One is conscious, the other is reactive. People with strong internal boundaries do not leak. They show up the same in every room, not because they are rigid, but because they are grounded. They do not need the room to validate them. They do not need people to approve of them. They are not performing a version of themselves. They are just themselves. And that consistency is what makes them trustworthy. Magnetic. Unmovable. Here is what you do not say. You do not say, I am just trying to keep the peace. You do not say, I did not want to make it awkward. You do not say, I am just being respectful. Those are excuses. What you are really saying is, I did not know how to stay myself, so I became who they needed me to be. Here is what you do say. You say nothing. You do not justify the leak. You notice it, you name it, and you commit to stopping it. Try this. For the next 2 weeks, notice when you shift. Pay attention to the moments when you feel different. Smaller, louder, more performative, less authentic. Ask yourself, who am I becoming right now? And is this who I actually am? Or is this who I think I need to be to stay safe here? Do not judge it. Just notice it. Then the next time you are in that same dynamic, make one small choice to stay yourself. Say one thing you would normally hold back. Hold one boundary you would normally let slide. Show one part of yourself you would normally hide. It will feel uncomfortable. It will feel risky. Do it anyway, because every time you stay yourself in a space that expects you to shrink, you strengthen your core. You stop leaking. You start containing. The identity leak is not just about losing yourself in the moment. It is about training yourself to believe that who you are is not fixed, that your identity is negotiable, that you can only exist in the shape others allow. And over time, this erodes you. You start to forget who you actually are, because you have been so many versions of yourself that none of them feel real anymore. You lose your voice, because you have spent so long performing voices that fit the room. You lose your preferences, because you have spent so long deferring to what others want. You lose your center, because you never built one strong enough to hold. This is not about being the same in every context. You can adjust your tone, your energy, your approach. That is emotional intelligence. But your core does not change. Your values do not shift. Your sense of self does not dissolve. You stay you, no matter who is in the room. You are not required to shapeshift to belong. You are not required to shrink to be loved. You are not required to perform to be accepted. And if a space requires you to be someone you are not, that space is not for you. Internal boundaries mean you stop leaking. You stop becoming whoever the room needs. You stop losing yourself in every dynamic you enter. You show up whole, contained, grounded, and the people who belong in your life will meet you there. Chapter 5. The Misunderstanding Test. Staying intact when people get you wrong. Elena sends a message to her friend. She declines an invitation. She is clear. She is kind. She says she needs time to herself this weekend. Her friend replies, "Are you upset with me?" Elena feels her chest tighten. No, she is not upset. She just needs space. But now she feels pressure to prove that, to reassure, to over-explain so her friend does not take it personally. She types out a long message. She lists all the reasons she needs alone time. She emphasizes that it has nothing to do with her friend. She apologizes for any confusion. She tries to manage her friend's interpretation of her boundary. By the time she hits send, she is exhausted. She just spent 20 minutes defending a decision that needed no defense, all because her friend misunderstood her. And instead of letting the misunderstanding sit, she scrambled to fix it. This is the misunderstanding test, and most people fail it. Here is the test. Someone misunderstands you. They interpret your words in a way you did not intend. They assign meaning to your actions that is not there. The question is, do you stay grounded in your truth, or do you collapse into their perception? Most people collapse. They feel the misunderstanding like a threat, like something that needs to be corrected immediately. So they rush to explain, to clarify, to make sure the other person sees them accurately. But here is what actually happens. You give away your power. You make their perception more important than your reality. You turn your truth into something that requires their approval to be valid. And that is not a boundary. That is a negotiation. People with strong internal boundaries do not need to be understood. They know what they meant. They know their intentions. And they are okay with other people getting it wrong, because they do not need external validation to know who they are. This does not mean you never clarify. Sometimes clarification is useful. But there is a difference between clarifying and collapsing. Clarifying is when you offer one sentence of context and then let it go. Collapsing is when you write paragraphs defending yourself, when you twist yourself into knots trying to control how someone sees you. One is grounded, the other is desperate. Example 1. You set a boundary at work. You tell your manager you cannot take on another project right now. They say, "I thought you were a team player." You feel the accusation. You want to prove you are a team player, so you list everything you have done for the team. You explain your workload, you defend your character. But what you just did is let their misunderstanding become more important than your boundary. You failed the test. Example 2. You tell a friend you need some distance, not because you are angry, just because you need space. They say, "I knew you did not really care about me." You feel the sting. You rush to correct them. You explain that you do care. You list all the ways you have shown up. You are trying to fix their perception, but their perception is not your responsibility. You failed the test. Example 3. You make a choice that does not make sense to your family. They say, "You are being selfish." You feel the weight of that word. Selfish. You want to prove you are not selfish. So you justify. You explain. You try to show them that your choice is reasonable. But you are letting their label define you. You failed the test. When you need people to see you accurately, you give them control over your stability. Because now your sense of self depends on whether they understand you. And if they do not, you unravel. This is why some people can destabilize you with one sentence. Not because they have power over you, but because you need them to see you correctly. And when they do not, you lose your footing. People with internal boundaries do not lose their footing when someone misunderstands them. They stay anchored in what they know to be true. They let the other person be wrong. This is not arrogance. This is containment. Here is what you do not say. You do not say, "No, you do not understand." You do not say, "Let me explain what I really meant." You do not say, "I am not the person you think I am." Here is what you do say. You say, "I understand that is how you see it." You say, "I am not going to explain further." You say, "You are welcome to think that." You say nothing at all. You let the misunderstanding exist. You do not chase it. You do not try to fix it. Try this. The next time someone misunderstands you, pause. Do not immediately correct them. Do not rush to clarify. Just pause. Ask yourself, does this misunderstanding actually matter? Will correcting it change anything? Or am I just uncomfortable with being seen inaccurately? If it does not matter, let it go. Say nothing. Let them be wrong. If it does matter, offer one sentence of clarification. Then stop. Do not explain further. Do not justify. Just state your truth once and let it stand. Then notice what happens. Notice the discomfort. Notice the urge to keep explaining. Sit with it. Do not act on it. Because that discomfort is not proof that you need to do more. It is proof that you are breaking a pattern. A pattern where you believed you needed everyone to see you correctly in order to be okay. You do not. The need to be understood is a trap, because understanding is subjective. People will always interpret you through their own lens, their own wounds, their own projections. You cannot control that, and you should not try. What you can control is whether you stay grounded in your own truth, whether you let their misunderstanding destabilize you, whether you make their perception more important than your reality. When you stop needing to be understood, you become free, because now your stability is not contingent on whether people get you. It is built on whether you get you. And that is unshakable. Some people will never understand you, not because you are not clear, but because they are not looking to understand. They are looking to confirm what they already believe. Let them. You do not need to convince them. You do not need to win them over. You do not need to be seen accurately by people who have already decided what they think. You can be misunderstood and still be okay. You can be misinterpreted and still be grounded. You can be seen incorrectly and still know exactly who you are. That is internal strength. That is self-trust. That is mastery. The misunderstanding test will come again and again. Someone will get you wrong. Someone will assign meaning to your actions that is not there. Someone will accuse you of something you are not, and every time, you will have a choice. Collapse and explain, or stay grounded and let them be wrong. The more you choose the latter, the stronger you become, because you stop giving away your power to people who do not see you. You stop making their perception your problem. You just stay yourself, whether they understand it or not. Chapter 6. The Silence Anchor. How to stay grounded when you are expected to respond. David is sitting in a family group chat. His uncle just sent a long message. It is full of assumptions, judgments, indirect accusations about David's life choices. Everyone else is reading it. No one is responding. But David feels the pressure building. He feels like he needs to say something, to correct the record, to defend himself. His fingers hover over the keyboard. He types a response, deletes it, types another, deletes that too. He knows that anything he says will escalate, but staying silent feels like agreement, like weakness, like letting his uncle win. So he responds. He keeps it measured, respectful, but firm. Within minutes, his uncle replies, longer this time, more pointed. Now other family members are chiming in. The conversation spirals. David is stuck defending himself in a thread that should never have started. He looks back at his first message. He realizes he did not need to respond at all, but he felt like he did. And now he is trapped in a conversation he cannot win. This is the cost of not having a silence anchor. And it pulls you into chaos you were never meant to enter. Most people believe that silence is passive, that if you do not respond, you are letting something go unchallenged, that if you do not defend yourself, people will think you agree, or that you are weak. But silence is not passive. Silence is a choice, and when used intentionally, it is one of the most powerful tools you have. The problem is that most people do not know how to use it. They feel pressure to respond to everything. Every accusation, every misunderstanding, every provocation, and that pressure controls them. Because when you feel like you have to respond, you are not responding from strength. You are responding from anxiety. From the need to be seen correctly. From the fear of what people will think if you stay quiet. And that kind of response always weakens you. The silence anchor is the ability to stay grounded when the world expects you to react. It is the ability to hear something and choose not to engage, not because you are afraid, but because you know engagement will not serve you. This is not about avoiding conflict. This is about choosing which conflicts are worth entering, and recognizing that most are not. Example 1. Someone sends you a passive-aggressive text. You feel the sting. You want to reply. You want to call it out. You want them to know you noticed, but instead you do nothing. You read it. You let it sit. You do not give it energy. Hours pass. Days pass. They realize you are not taking the bait. The power dynamic shifts. You stayed anchored. They did not. Example 2. A family member makes a comment about your life. It is critical, judgmental. You feel the urge to defend, to explain, to prove them wrong, but you do not. You let the comment hang in the air. You do not validate it with a response. You stay silent. They feel uncomfortable. You stay grounded. That is the anchor. Example 3. Someone accuses you of something in a group setting. Everyone is watching. You feel the pressure to respond immediately, to clear your name, to set the record straight. But you do not. You pause. You let the accusation sit. You say, I am not going to engage with this right now. Or you say nothing at all. You do not let their urgency become yours. You stay anchored. Silence is not agreement. Silence is boundary. When you stay silent, you are not saying they are right. You are saying their statement does not deserve your energy. You are not saying you are weak. You are saying you are strong enough not to need the last word. You are not saying you are afraid. You are saying you are selective about where you place your attention. And that selectivity is power. People who need you to respond are trying to pull you into their emotional space. They want you reactive, defensive, engaged. When you refuse to enter, you take away their leverage. Here is what you do not say. You do not say, I am not going to dignify that with a response. That is still a response. That is still engagement. You do not say, I am choosing not to respond. That is announcing your boundary, which invites challenge. Here is what you do say. Nothing. You let the silence do the work. You let the absence of your reaction speak louder than any words you could offer. Or if you must say something, you say, I am not discussing this, then you stop. You do not elaborate. You do not explain. You drop the anchor and walk away. Try this. For the next week, practice strategic silence. When someone says something that would normally pull you into a response, pause. Do not reply immediately. Let the moment sit. Ask yourself, does this require a response, or do I just feel like it does? If it does not require a response, stay silent. Let the other person sit with their words. Let them wonder why you did not engage. If it does require a response, wait. Wait an hour. Wait a day. Respond only when you are no longer reactive. And when you do respond, keep it short. One sentence, then return to silence. Notice how this changes the dynamic. Notice how people stop pulling you into unnecessary conversations. Notice how much energy you save. The pressure to respond comes from the belief that silence will be interpreted negatively, that people will think you are avoiding, hiding, guilty. But most of the time, people do not think about your silence at all. They move on. They forget. And if they do interpret it, that interpretation says more about them than it does about you. You cannot control what people think when you stay silent, but you can control whether you let their expectations dictate your actions. And when you stop letting external pressure pull you into response, you reclaim your energy, your time, your peace, because you are no longer at the mercy of every provocation, every bait, every expectation that you show up and explain yourself. You decide when to engage and when not to. Some conversations are traps. They are designed to pull you in, to make you defend, to make you react. The only way to win is not to enter. This does not mean you never stand up for yourself. This does not mean you let people walk over you. This means you discern which battles are worth fighting, and you recognize that most are not. Silence is not surrender. Silence is strategy. When you stay silent in the face of provocation, you signal that you are not controlled by external pressure, that you do not need to correct every wrong perception, that you are grounded enough to let things be misunderstood, and that groundedness is what makes you unshakable. The silence anchor is not about withholding. It is about containment. You contain your response. You do not let it spill out reactively. You hold it until you decide whether it is worth releasing. Most of the time, it is not. And the more you practice this, the more you realize how much energy you were giving away, how many conversations you were entering that did not need you, how many defenses you were mounting that no one asked for. You stop being reactive. You start being intentional. And that shift changes everything. You are no longer pulled into chaos. You are anchored, grounded, still. And from that place, you can respond when it matters and stay silent when it does not. That is mastery. Chapter 7. The expectation dissolve. Releasing the need to meet invisible standards. Mia has been preparing for this dinner for days, not because she is excited, but because she is anxious. She knows her sister will ask about her career, her mother will comment on her appearance. Her father will make some remark about her choices. She rehearses responses in her head. She plans what to say, what to avoid, how to navigate every potential criticism. By the time she arrives, she is already drained. She has spent so much energy trying to meet expectations that were never spoken, trying to be the version of herself that will avoid disappointment. She sits down. The questions come. She gives the answers she prepared. She performs the role she thought was required. But no one seems satisfied, because the expectations were never clear to begin with. They were assumptions, projections, invisible standards she was trying to meet without ever knowing what they were. She drives home exhausted. She gave everything, and it still was not enough, because she was chasing something that did not exist. Most people spend their lives trying to meet expectations they were never told about. They sense what others want, what others expect, what others think they should be, and they twist themselves trying to deliver it. But here is the problem. Most expectations are not real. They are imagined. They are assumptions you made about what someone else needs from you. And you have been killing yourself trying to meet them. This is called phantom expectation, and it runs your life more than you realize. You think your boss expects you to always say yes. So you do. But they never said that. You assumed it. You think your partner expects you to be available at all times. So you are. But they never asked for that. You assumed it. You think your friends expect you to show up to everything. So you do. But they never demanded it. You assumed it. You are living in service to invisible standards, and you do not even know if they are real. Example 1. You are at work. You think your manager expects you to be the first one in and the last one out. So you stay late every night. You skip breaks. You work through lunch. But your manager never said this. You just assumed that is what dedication looks like. Meanwhile, you are burning out trying to meet a standard that was never set. Example 2. You are in a relationship. You think your partner expects you to always be happy. So you hide your bad days. You suppress your frustration. You perform positivity even when you feel low. But your partner never said they needed you to be happy all the time. You assumed vulnerability was a burden. So you carry everything alone. Example 3. You are with your family. You think they expect you to have everything figured out. So you pretend you do. You do not talk about your struggles. You do not admit when you are uncertain. You perform competence even when you are falling apart. But they never said they needed you to be perfect. You assumed showing struggle would disappoint them. So you hide. Here is the truth. Most of the expectations you are trying to meet do not exist. And even when they do exist, they are not your responsibility. Someone else's expectation of you is not a command. It is a preference. And you are not obligated to fulfill it. But you have been living like you are. You have been scanning for what people want from you. And then giving it, even when it costs you everything. This is not kindness. This is self-abandonment. You are so focused on meeting external expectations that you have no idea what your own standards are. You do not know what you want, what you value, what you are willing to give. You are just reacting, adjusting, performing, and it is destroying you. Here is what you do not say. You do not say, I thought that is what you wanted. You do not say, I was just trying to make you happy. You do not say, I did not want to let you down. Those are excuses for abandoning yourself. Here is what you do say. You say, I am not going to assume what you need. If you have an expectation, say it directly. You say, I am not responsible for meeting standards that were never communicated. You say, I am done performing for invisible audiences. Try this. For the next 2 weeks, stop assuming what people expect. When you feel the pull to adjust your behavior to meet an unspoken standard, pause. Ask yourself, did this person actually say they expect this, or am I assuming they do? If they did not say it, let it go. Do not try to meet it. Do not perform for it. If you are not sure, ask. Say, I want to make sure I understand what you need from me. Can you be specific? This will feel vulnerable. It will feel like you are admitting you do not know how to read the room. But that is the point. You should not have to read the room. You should not have to guess what people need. If someone has an expectation, they can use their words. And if they do not, you are not responsible for it. The expectation dissolve is about releasing the invisible weight you have been carrying. You stop trying to anticipate what people want. You stop performing for approval you were never going to get. You stop chasing standards that shift every time you get close. You start asking directly. You start communicating clearly. You start setting your own standards and living by them. And you stop making other people's preferences your problem. This does not mean you become selfish. This does not mean you stop caring about others. This means you stop sacrificing yourself for expectations that do not exist. Because when you do that, you are not serving anyone. You are just disappearing. Some people will be upset when you stop meeting their unspoken expectations. They were counting on you to keep guessing, to keep adjusting, to keep performing. Let them be upset. Because if they cannot communicate what they need, they do not get to be disappointed when you do not deliver it. Healthy people say what they want. Unhealthy people expect you to figure it out and then punish you when you get it wrong. You are not responsible for managing that dynamic. You are responsible for showing up as yourself, for knowing your limits, for honoring your boundaries, and for refusing to live in service to invisible standards. The moment you stop trying to meet phantom expectations, you reclaim your energy. You stop second-guessing every choice. You stop performing every interaction. You stop carrying the weight of what you think people need from you. You just show up as you are, with what you have, and you let that be enough. And if it is not enough for someone, that is information. That is clarity. That is a signal that the relationship was built on performance, not presence. And those relationships were never sustainable anyway. You are allowed to stop guessing. You are allowed to stop performing. You are allowed to stop trying to be the person you think everyone needs. You are allowed to just be yourself. And to let people tell you directly if they need something different. Internal boundaries mean you stop abandoning yourself to meet invisible standards. You stop living in reaction to what you think is expected. You start living from your center, from your values, from your truth, and you let everyone else adjust to that, not the other way around. Chapter 8. The Emotional Separation. Feeling without absorbing. Lucas is on the phone with his mother. She is upset, crying, talking about how hard her life is, how lonely she feels, how nothing ever works out. Lucas feels it immediately. The weight in his chest, the tightness in his throat. Her sadness becomes his sadness. Her pain becomes his pain. He tries to fix it. He offers solutions. He reminds her of all the good things in her life. He tries to pull her out of the emotional spiral. But she is not listening. She just keeps talking, venting, spiraling deeper. By the time the call ends, Lucas is exhausted, drained. He feels like he just carried her emotional weight for an hour, and he did not help her. She is still upset, and now he is too. He does not understand why this happens every time, why he cannot just listen without absorbing, why her emotions become his emotions, why he feels responsible for fixing what he did not break. This is the cost of not knowing how to emotionally separate, and it is running his life. Emotional separation is not detachment. It is not coldness. It is not shutting people out. It is the ability to be present with someone's emotion without making it yours. Most people do not know how to do this. They think empathy means feeling what the other person feels. That caring means taking on their pain. That love means carrying their burdens. But that is not empathy. That is enmeshment, and enmeshment destroys both people. When you absorb someone else's emotion, you are not helping them. You are drowning with them. And now there are two people underwater instead of one. Real support is not about joining someone in their pain. It is about staying grounded so you can hold space for them without collapsing. But you were never taught how to do that. So you merge. You blur the line between their feelings and yours, and you lose yourself in the process. This happens because you do not have a clear emotional boundary. You do not know where you end and someone else begins. So when they feel sad, you feel sad. When they feel anxious, you feel anxious. When they feel angry, you feel angry. You are not choosing this. It is happening automatically. Because you do not have the internal structure to stay separate. Example 1. Your friend calls you in crisis. They are panicking, spiraling. You listen, and within minutes you are panicking too. You are not helping them regulate. You are dysregulating with them. By the end of the conversation, you both feel worse, because you absorbed their emotion instead of witnessing it. Example 2. Your partner is stressed about work. They come home tense, frustrated. You feel it immediately. Their stress becomes your stress. You start trying to fix their day, solve their problems, manage their mood. But they did not ask you to. And now, you are both stressed, because you could not stay separate. Example 3. Your parent is disappointed in you. You can feel it, even if they do not say it, and that disappointment sinks into you. You start doubting yourself, questioning your choices. You absorb their emotion and make it your reality, even though it was never yours to carry. Here is what most people do not understand. You can care about someone without carrying their emotions. You can witness their pain without making it yours. You can support them without absorbing them. But this requires a clear boundary, not a wall. A boundary. A wall shuts people out. A boundary keeps you intact while staying present. When someone is upset, you do not need to fix it. You do not need to take it on. You do not need to make their emotional state your responsibility. You just need to stay grounded and let them feel what they feel. Here is what you do not say. You do not say, "Do not feel that way." You do not say, "Let me fix this for you." You do not say, "Your emotions are too much for me." Here is what you do say. You say, "I hear you." You say, "That sounds really hard." You say, "I am here, but I cannot carry this for you." You say, "What do you need right now?" You validate without absorbing. You witness without merging. Try this. The next time someone shares a difficult emotion with you, practice staying separate. Before you respond, take a breath. Ground yourself in your body. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice your own emotional state. Then remind yourself, this is their emotion, not mine. I can care about them without taking this on. Listen without trying to fix. Reflect back what you hear. Say, "It sounds like you are feeling overwhelmed," or "I can see this is really affecting you." But do not take it into your body. Do not let it become yours. After the conversation, do a release practice. Shake your hands. Take deep breaths. Say out loud, "I release what is not mine." This may feel cold at first. It is not. It is healthy. Because you staying intact helps them more than you collapsing with them. The reason you absorb is because you believe that is what caring looks like. You believe that if you do not feel their pain, you are not being a good friend, a good partner, a good child. But that belief is killing you, because you cannot sustain that level of emotional merging. You cannot carry everyone's emotions and still have room for your own. And over time, you stop knowing what you feel because you are too busy feeling what everyone else feels. You lose your center, your clarity, your sense of self, and you become an emotional sponge, absorbing everything, holding nothing, drained constantly. That is not love. That is codependency. Emotional separation does not mean you stop caring. It means you care in a way that does not destroy you. You show up, you listen, you support, but you do not merge. You hold space without losing space. You stay present without disappearing, and that presence is more valuable than any amount of absorbed pain. Because when you stay grounded, you give the other person something solid to lean on. When you collapse with them, you give them nothing. People do not need you to drown with them. They need you to stay steady while they find their way back to shore. And you cannot do that if you are underwater too. Some people will not understand this boundary. They will feel like you are being distant, cold, unsupportive. Because they are used to you absorbing. They are used to you taking on their emotions so they do not have to hold them. When you stop doing that, they feel the absence. Let them. You are not responsible for managing their emotions. You are responsible for managing yours. And if someone only feels supported when you are collapsing, that is not a relationship. That is extraction. Healthy people do not need you to absorb their emotions. They need you to witness them. And there is a massive difference. Emotional separation is one of the most important internal boundaries you can build, because without it, you will spend your life carrying what does not belong to you, feeling what is not yours, drowning in emotions that were never meant for you. You will lose yourself, again and again, in every relationship, in every dynamic, in every conversation. But when you learn to stay separate, you reclaim your emotional autonomy. You can be present without being consumed. You can care without collapsing. You can love without losing yourself. And that is freedom. Chapter 9. The Permission Withdrawal. Stopping others from defining your reality. Sophia is having coffee with a friend. She mentions she is thinking about changing careers, trying something new, something that excites her. Her friend looks skeptical. Really, that seems risky. Are you sure you are ready for that? I mean, you have a stable job now. Why would you give that up? Sophia feels the doubt creep in. A moment ago, she was excited. Now she is questioning herself. Maybe her friend is right. Maybe it is too risky. Maybe she is not ready. She spends the rest of the day second-guessing, not because anything changed, but because someone else questioned her, and she gave them permission to define her reality. She does not realize she just handed over her power. She let someone else's doubt become her doubt, someone else's fear become her fear. This happens all the time, and most people do not even notice. Here is the pattern. You know what you want. You feel clear about it. Then you share it with someone, and they respond with doubt, skepticism, concern. And suddenly, you are not so sure anymore. Not because they gave you new information, but because you gave them authority over your inner knowing. You let them rewrite your reality, and now their version feels more real than yours. This is called permission-based reality, and it means you do not trust your own perception unless someone else validates it. You need external confirmation to believe what you know. You need approval to trust your instincts. You need agreement to feel certain. And when you do not get it, you collapse. Because your reality is not rooted in you. It is rooted in other people's responses to you. And that makes you fragile. People with strong internal boundaries do not need permission to trust themselves. They do not need validation to know what they know. They do not need agreement to move forward. They define their own reality, and they do not let others rewrite it. Example 1. You set a boundary with someone. You know it is necessary. You feel good about it. Then someone tells you it is too harsh, too extreme. You start questioning whether you overreacted, whether you were too rigid. You let their opinion override your inner knowing. You gave them permission to define your boundary. And now you are doubting something that was clear 5 minutes ago. Example 2. You make a decision about your life, a big one. You feel aligned with it. Then a family member says, "I do not think that is a good idea." And suddenly you are not sure. You start listing reasons why maybe they are right. You let their doubt infect your certainty. You gave them permission to define your choice, and now you are stuck in indecision. Example 3. You share how you are feeling. Someone tells you that you are overreacting, that it is not that serious, that you are being too sensitive, and you start to believe them. You let them tell you what your experience is. You gave them permission to define your emotions. And now, you do not trust what you feel. This is one of the deepest violations of internal boundaries, because it is not about what someone does to you. It is about what you allow them to do. You hand them the pen, and then you are surprised when they rewrite your story. But here is the truth. No one gets to tell you what your reality is, not what you feel, not what you want, not what you know, not what is true for you. Only you get to define that. And the moment you let someone else do it, you lose yourself. Here is what you do not say. You do not say, "Maybe you are right." You do not say, "I had not thought of it that way." You do not say, "Do you think I am making a mistake?" Those are the words of someone giving away their authority. Here is what you do say. You say, "I appreciate your perspective, but I trust my decision." You say, "I know what is right for me." You say, "I am not asking for input on this." You say nothing at all and let your knowing stand. Try this. For the next week, notice when you give someone permission to define your reality. Notice when you share something you feel certain about, and then someone questions it, and you immediately start doubting. Pause in that moment. Do not adjust. Do not defend. Just notice. Ask yourself, am I doubting this because new information came in? Or am I doubting this because someone else doubted it? If it is the latter, take your power back. Remind yourself, their doubt is not my doubt. Their fear is not my fear. Their reality is not my reality. Then return to what you knew before they spoke, and hold it. Do not let their uncertainty become yours. The permission withdrawal is about taking back your authority. You stop letting other people's reactions dictate your inner state. You stop outsourcing your knowing. You stop making their approval a prerequisite for your certainty. You trust yourself. Even when others do not trust you, you believe in your choices. Even when others do not believe in them, you know what is true for you. Even when others tell you it is not. This is not arrogance. This is sovereignty. And it is non-negotiable if you want internal boundaries that hold. Some people will not like this shift. They were comfortable having input on your reality. They liked being able to sway you, influence you, shape your choices. When you stop giving them that power, they feel the loss. They may push harder. They may question you more aggressively. They may accuse you of being closed off, stubborn, unwilling to listen. Let them. Because what they are really saying is, I am upset that I can no longer control your perception of yourself. And that is their problem, not yours. Healthy people do not need to define your reality. They trust you to know yourself, and they respect your choices even when they do not understand them. Unhealthy people need you to see things their way, because your independence threatens their influence, and those are the people you need to stop giving permission to. You will know you have strong internal boundaries when someone questions you, and you do not waver. When someone doubts you and you stay certain. When someone tells you that you are wrong and you do not scramble to prove you are right. You just stay grounded in what you know, and you let them be wrong about you. because their version of you is not more true than your version of you, and you do not need them to see you accurately for you to be okay. The permission withdrawal is not a one-time event, it is a practice. Because people will keep trying to define your reality. It is human nature. People project, they interpret, they assign meaning based on their own lens. And every time they do, you will have a choice. Let them rewrite you, or hold your ground. The more you choose the latter, the stronger your internal structure becomes. You stop being shaped by external opinion. You start being anchored in internal knowing. And that anchoring is what makes you unshakable. You are allowed to trust yourself, even when no one else does. You are allowed to know what you know. Even when others disagree, you are allowed to define your own reality and to refuse anyone who tries to rewrite it. That is your right. That is your power. That is your freedom. Chapter 10. The Centered Self. Living from your core, not your edges. Ryan is exhausted, not from work, not from lack of sleep, but from constantly adjusting. At work, he is one version of himself. With his family, another. With his friends, another. With his partner, another. He shifts depending on who is in the room. He modulates his tone. He adjusts his opinions. He reshapes his energy. He does this unconsciously. It feels natural, necessary. Like this is just what you do to get along with people. But lately, he has started to notice something. He does not know who he actually is anymore. He knows who he is supposed to be in each context. But he does not know who he is when no one is watching. He has spent so long living from his edges, reacting to external demands that he lost touch with his center. And now, he feels hollow. This is what happens when you do not have a centered self. You become a collection of reactions, a shifting reflection, a person with no core. Most people do not live from their center. They live from their edges. Their edges are where they meet the world, where they adjust, where they perform, where they react to what is happening around them. And there is nothing wrong with adjusting. Flexibility is important. Social intelligence is valuable. But if you only live from your edges, you lose yourself. Because your edges are reactive. They change based on context. They shift based on who you are with. They are not stable. Your center is different. Your center is who you are when no one is asking anything of you. When there is no pressure, no expectation, no audience. It is your core values, your true preferences, your unperformed self. And most people have never met that version of themselves. Because they have been performing for so long, they do not know what is real and what is adaptation. The centered self is not rigid. It is not about being the same in every situation. It is about having a stable internal reference point that does not change no matter who is in the room. It is the part of you that does not shift, the part that stays true, the part that knows who you are even when everyone else is confused. Example 1. You are at a social gathering. You notice yourself changing. Your laugh sounds different. Your stories sound rehearsed. You are performing a version of yourself that fits the room. But when you leave, you feel drained. Because you were not yourself. You were playing a role. You lived from your edges, not your center. Example 2. You are in a relationship. You notice you agree with things you do not actually agree with. You laugh at things that are not funny. You go along with plans you do not want. You are adjusting constantly. And over time, you forget what you actually want. Because you stop checking in with your center. You only listen to your edges. Example 3. You are at work. You are competent, professional. But you realize you do not know if this is what you actually want. You have been so focused on meeting expectations, on fitting into the role, that you never asked yourself if this aligns with who you are. You have been living from your edges for so long you forgot to consult your center. Living from your center does not mean you ignore the world around you. It means you filter the world through your core. You take in information. You adjust when it makes sense. But you do not lose yourself in the process. You stay anchored. You stay rooted. You stay whole. People who live from their center are not swayed by every opinion. They are not destabilized by every challenge. They are not performing for approval. They know who they are, and that knowing is not conditional. Here is what you do not say. You do not say, "I will be whoever you need me to be." You do not say, "I just want to fit in." You do not say, "I do not want to make waves." Those are the words of someone living from their edges. Here is what you do say. You say, "This is who I am." You say, "This is what I value." You say, "This is what works for me." You say, "I am not adjusting on this." You speak from your center, not from your fear of rejection. Try this. For the next week, spend 10 minutes a day alone. No phone, no distractions, just you. Ask yourself, who am I when no one is watching? What do I actually want? What do I actually value? What feels true to me, not to the people around me? Write it down, not to share with anyone, just to clarify it for yourself. This is your center. This is the part of you that does not shift. Then, as you move through your week, notice when you are living from your edges. When you are adjusting, performing, reacting. Pause. Check in with your center. Ask, does this align with who I actually am? Or am I just doing this to fit in? If it does not align, stop. Make a different choice. One that comes from your center, not your edges. This will feel uncomfortable. It will feel risky. Do it anyway. Because every time you choose your center over your edges, you strengthen your internal structure. The centered self is not about being inflexible. It is about being grounded. You can adapt. You can adjust. But you do not lose yourself in the process. You bend without breaking. You shift without dissolving. And that is what makes you strong. Most people are afraid that if they live from their center, they will be rejected, that people will not like them, that they will be alone. But the opposite is true. When you live from your edges, people do not actually know you. They know the version of you that adjusts to fit them. And that version is not real. When you live from your center, people meet the real you. And the ones who belong in your life will stay. The ones who do not will leave. And that is clarity, not loss. Some people will not like it when you stop adjusting. They were comfortable with the version of you that bent to fit them. When you stop bending, they feel the absence. They may accuse you of changing, of being distant, of not caring. But what they really mean is, you are no longer performing for me, and I do not know how to relate to the real you. Let them adjust, or let them leave. Because you are not responsible for maintaining a version of yourself that is not true. You are responsible for staying whole, for staying centered, for staying you. The centered self is built through repetition. Every time you choose your truth over performance, you strengthen it. Every time you stay grounded when the world asks you to shift, you deepen it. Over time, your center becomes unshakable, not because you are rigid, but because you are rooted. You know who you are, and that knowing does not depend on who is in the room. You do not lose yourself in relationships. You do not disappear in dynamics. You do not perform for approval. You just show up, whole, grounded, clear. And that is the most powerful version of yourself you can be. Internal boundaries are not about keeping people out. They are about keeping yourself intact. And the centered self is what makes that possible. When you live from your center, you stop collapsing under pressure. You stop leaking in every interaction. You stop becoming whoever the room needs you to be. You stay yourself, quietly, calmly, completely. And from that place, you can connect without losing yourself. You can love without dissolving. You can show up without disappearing. That is freedom. That is strength. That is mastery. You are not a reflection. You are not a reaction. You are not a performance. You are a whole person. With a center, with a core, with a truth that does not shift, and the world does not get to change that. Only you do. Conclusion. You made it through. 10 chapters, 10 shifts, 10 ways to stop losing yourself every time the world asks you to adjust. You now know that internal boundaries are not about what you say to others. They are about what you refuse to let others do to your sense of self. You know that you do not need to explain yourself into exhaustion, that you do not need permission to trust what you know, that you do not need approval to stay intact. You know that silence is not weakness, that misunderstanding is not a crisis, that being seen incorrectly does not mean you are wrong. You know that you can care without absorbing, that you can be present without collapsing, that you can love without losing yourself, and you know that living from your center is not selfish. It is the only way to stay whole. This is not the end. This is the foundation. Because internal boundaries are not built once and forgotten. They are practiced. Daily. In every interaction, in every moment someone tries to pull you off center. Every time you feel the urge to collapse, you will pause. Every time you feel pressure to explain, you will stay silent. Every time someone questions your reality, you will hold your ground. Every time you are misunderstood, you will let it be. Every time someone tries to rewrite who you are, you will refuse. This is the practice, and it never stops. Because the world will always test your boundaries, people will always push, dynamics will always pull. But you will not move, not because you are rigid, but because you are rooted. When you started this audiobook, you were exhausted, fragile, shifting in every space you entered, losing yourself in every relationship, performing in every interaction. You did not know how to stay yourself when someone doubted you, how to stay grounded when someone misunderstood you, how to stay whole when the world asked you to adjust. But now you do. You have learned that your identity is not up for debate, that your knowing does not require validation, that your presence does not need permission. You have learned how to stop leaking, how to stop collapsing, how to stop dissolving every time someone expects something different from you. You are no longer at the mercy of external pressure. You are no longer shaped by other people's perceptions. You are no longer performing for approval. You are centered, grounded, intact, and nothing outside of you can change that unless you let it. You will lose people, not because you became cold, but because you stopped being whoever they needed you to be. Some people were only in your life because you adjusted to fit them, because you bent, because you performed. When you stop doing that, they leave, and that is not loss, that is clarity, because the right people do not need you to shapeshift. They do not need you to explain yourself into exhaustion. They do not need you to collapse to connect. They meet you at your center, and they stay there. Everyone else was just passing through, and that is okay. There will be moments when you doubt yourself, when you wonder if you are being too rigid, too closed off, too much. In those moments, come back to this. You are not too much. You are just no longer too little. You are not closed off. You are just no longer leaking. You are not rigid. You are just no longer collapsing. And that is not something to apologize for. That is something to protect. Internal boundaries are the difference between surviving and living, between reacting and choosing, between being shaped by the world and shaping your own life. You cannot control what people think of you. You cannot control how they interpret you. You cannot control whether they understand you. But you can control whether you stay intact, whether you hold your ground, whether you trust yourself when no one else does, and that control is everything. This is your life, not theirs, not the version they want, not the version they expected, not the version that makes them comfortable. Yours. And you do not need anyone's permission to live it. You are allowed to stay yourself in every room, in every relationship, in every moment. You are allowed to trust what you know, even when others doubt it. You are allowed to hold your boundaries, even when others challenge them. You are allowed to be misunderstood, and to be okay with it. You are allowed to live from your center, and to let your edges adjust only when it serves you. That is not selfishness. That is self-preservation. That is internal strength. That is freedom. You are no longer fragile. You are grounded. You are no longer performing. You are present. You are no longer collapsing. You are whole. And that wholeness is yours to keep. Protect it. Honor it. Live from it. Because the world needs people who know who they are, who stay intact under pressure, who do not dissolve when challenged. The world needs you, centered, grounded, unshakable. Now go be that. If this audiobook has brought you clarity, strength, or peace, consider supporting the channel so more people can find this message. Please like this audio and subscribe. Your support helps this work reach those who feel overwhelmed, anxious, or unprotected, and gives them a path back to calm, confidence, and emotional freedom. Thank you for listening. Stay grounded. Stay wise. You are the anchor in every storm.